Hi Josh, you are a speaker on our conference Code Europe, and your talk was about a tiny framework called Chew. But at the beginning I wanted to ask you about how do you feel at Code Europe and what surprised you the most, because we will see each other on a conference in Krakow, so we have a small experience in on that conference.
I've been really enjoying it. Yeah. I- I've been liking Code Europe like a lot so far. This is the second city we're in now, and I would kind of like went to Poland like I don't really know what to expect, but I've been having like so much fun. Um, People are like super nice around here. Talks are interesting. Didn't see too many talks, but I've been really enjoying it.
So let's talk about some technical stuff. You were talking about the Chew, about this tiny unidirectional framework. Um, Now, in the technical world, in the programming world, there is one unidirectional framework called React.js. You are familiar with, and it's quite famous. So, how do you compare those two, your Chew and React.js from Facebook?
So I really like React. React was pretty much the first framework that did things a bit differently. Kind of like started a movement of people being like, oh, you know what? Those traditional rules of how to build web apps, we can change that. We can like tweak that. We can look at things differently. And so they changed it. They started doing that, and it became like really popular. But like no framework, no technology will last forever. Every technology has their own problems. And so I think React came out like 3 years ago. This year, like 2016, a whole bunch of like post-React frameworks have started popping up. Things that are like, hey, you know, that React thing is cool, but it's got a few problems like performance or size or they don't like the API. And I think Chew is part of that like post-React type framework. What we try and do is make things fast, make things easy to learn, and also not use non-standard language stuff. The whole framework is like 5 kilobytes, whereas React is like a bit bigger, but React has a much larger community. So I feel there's like a movement of post-React frameworks coming up. Chew is part of that. And again, this will like inspire React to like improve, and like other frameworks will come after that. And it all like moves along.
Okay, and how do you compare it with also the Angular second version, because it's also something new on the market?
Yeah. So I think the big players right now, I would say, is Angular 2 is kind of big, at least in terms of marketing. React is very, very big. You've got Vue.js, which is also part of the post-React thing, I'd say. So Angular 2 is based on a new programming language called, I believe they use TypeScript, which is by Microsoft. And their main paradigm is two-way binding. Or are they using, no, they're using reactive extensions now. Sorry. Used to be two-way binding. Now it's reactive extensions and TypeScript, which are all like Microsoft technologies. Chew is much simpler in design. It's closer to what React and Redux do, but like really, really reduced to the minimum API. We have like 6 methods, and that is all we give you. TypeScript is probably more for a large organization, which is very familiar with Java or like, I don't know, reactive extensions or like strongly typed languages. Chew is more if you're, oh, I've got a cool idea and I want to build a thing, then you build it and it's there. And like, it's for fast iteration. Different trade-offs.
So you would recommend it for smaller or larger projects?
It really depends on what you try and do. I really like the idea of, so there's this story. I'm going to go story time now. A couple of years ago, there was this millionaire in London or somewhere, and he wanted to build he put out a competition for people to build a man-powered aircraft to cross the canal between like England and France, and was like 10 million. If you do this only using like human force, 10 million you will get. And like all these teams built like planes, and everyone like made a plane and it like crashed. Eventually someone solved it. And the way they solved it was by building a plane that would like fly and that would like crash, but then could be like reassembled real fast, tweaked real fast, and then it would like go again. and then they did it like 20 times, and then they managed to cross the canal because they were so fast at iterating. I think Chew is a framework that's optimized for iterating. Everything is like very tiny, very simple, very modular. So while it might not be the big upfront design that's instantly good, you can iterate real fast on it, and that's its main strength. Not to say that other frameworks don't do that, but this is the point that we've chosen for Chew.
Okay, so if we are in the topic of JavaScript, so where do you see JavaScript in 2 years?
JavaScript in 2 years.
It's a really hard question.
So what year is it now? It's 2016. It will be 2008. Oh, it's pretty much 2007. 2019. JavaScript 2000. ECMAScript 2020 is what we'll be dealing with. I think the language committee, so the language itself, people are like, the committee is going to iterate on it. It's going to add more features. It's going to get bigger. It's going to get closer to C++ as a language. But that's the language itself. I think the people using the language, NPM is a really good thing. Right now, there's super interesting things coming out on JavaScript, the language. Stuff like people have peer-to-peer map systems without central servers, all written in JavaScript. They have giant torrenting applications, cool WebGL visualizations. I feel like user-land JavaScript is going to continue to innovate and really push the boundaries of what's possible. Whereas JavaScript, the language, might change in many ways, but it will always be backwards compatible. So all these people doing all these mad experiments on it will continue to iterate. Yeah, I see the community growing and adding more cool things to it.
And what features you think, what new features of JavaScript, what planned features of JavaScript you think will be pushing that language into the future the most?
So I'm a bit of a JavaScript conservative, you might say. me and my friends, it's a running gag. Yeah, well, yeah. But it's a bit of a running gag that we're JavaScript conservatives, because what we think is we want our platform to be stable. Have a super boring, stable, and efficient platform, and then we can build on top of that, create our abstractions that work forever and that are very interesting. If you want to build a peer-to-peer system, you want to have your runtime be super stable and boring because the thing you're building is very interesting. So JavaScript, the language, for me, is not adding anything interesting at this point. The most recent interesting change they made was multi-line strings, and that's the only thing that I need to use.
Okay,
yeah.
That's funny. Okay, so you said about this peer-to-peer system, and as I know, you and your team, your friends are developing that system, and it's open source. So you can tell us about more about your open source project, about your work.
Yeah, definitely. So I work for a nonprofit called the DAT Project. It's the 8 of us. We're grant funded, so we get money from grants, no investors. And what we do is we build data tools for scientists. So in science, there's a problem of reproducibility. Scientist A does an experiment, and then scientist B wants to repeat it, and they can't do it because they don't have the data sets or they don't have the code that was used. And we try and build tools for that. So one thing we built is a live version of the BitTorrent protocol, where BitTorrent is a protocol meant to share a single static file on a peer-to-peer system. We've managed to do the same thing, but for live streaming data. So instead of you create a file and then you share it, you want to update the file, you'll need to create a new torrent. Our system is you create a link and you can infinitely add more data to the link. So you can live stream a video on a peer-to-peer system. You can create a better YouTube, a peer-to-peer YouTube, or a peer-to-peer Dropbox, or a peer-to-peer SoundCloud, all using our technology. And that's pretty cool.
Okay, so thank you very much for talk, and see you soon.